Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn Sarowick. Sejohn?
Hey, everybody. What's going on, man?
Honestly, I'd like to apologize, because we're a little late to this recording. Not that it affects you, the listener, because it's a pod, it's captured, and you don't know that we're starting late. And, you know, even ahead of that, we're a day early for the recording, but it's still... We're late to the recording. Like, we said that we were going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night, and that was the plan. But then something happened. And that something is something that I felt should be shared here.
Yeah, I don't know much about what's going on. I just received an ominous text earlier, and that was about it. So
yeah,
I was like, yeah, man.
Would you like to read? It can be dramatic or just regular. What I sent you.
So as I sat here waiting, preparing myself as I do for my hour ritual before the show starts every week. Everybody should know by now that that's what I do. I received a text.
No, time out. You're sitting at your computer for an hour before we record. We could be recording an hour earlier than we do.
No, I have to do the ritual, Devin. That's the point. No, but beforehand, and it wasn't even a text. It came through. I just realized that it came through on our business channel. It was business. What I got was the Why is Zachary talking to me about Hamilton and business? Wait a minute.
No, because because it is business. We talked about Hamilton on this show last week, and I think that's why he got to you. I think I sent it to you directly. I really hope I didn't put it on our actual Discord.
Oh, that makes more sense. Yeah, here we go. Yeah,
okay.
Because
like no one, only Sejohn needs to know this.
Yeah, well, yeah, here we sit telling the world. But 10 minutes before we record, 15 minutes before we record, I receive a text that goes, "I will have to be on a little after 8 p.m. Eastern. I have to clean myself up. I'm covered in maple frosting." Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Just a message that just said, "I'm going to be late. I'm covered in maple frosting." And I didn't know how to react to that. So I just gave like a, okay. Should have put a ...
Yeah, so I wanted to address that with Sejohn, and you, the listener, you get to be the fly on the wall. It's crazy. The fact that, so here's the deal. Dunkin' Donuts in this area, I don't know if they do it nationwide anymore, because a couple of years ago when Dunkin' Donuts, before they changed their name, but they changed their menu, because turns out you shouldn't be eating meals at a place with donut in the name. Probably
well, I mean, even if you're ordering a sandwich later in the day, the mere fact that you're in a building with donut on the title means that you're in bad health.
Yeah, exactly. So they changed their menu, and while they modified a bunch of things, one of the strangest modifications to the Dunkin' Donuts menu from where I was sitting was the elimination of the maple frosted coffee roll.
What?
Yeah,
that's like a staple for them.
Look,
I haven't been on the East Coast in a while, so we get the rare Dunkin' out here, and it's not the same.
But do they have the maple frosted coffee roll at the rare Dunkin' out there?
I mean, I'll be entirely honest. I didn't even think to look for it. I just kind of assumed it was always there.
Right. It feels like a staple. It feels like one of those things that Dunkin' Donuts should always have.
If somebody said to me, "I really want a maple frosted roll right now," I'd point them to a Dunkin' Donuts. That's what I would say. I was like, "Oh, we should find a Dunkin' Donuts and get a good one." That's
yeah, it's sort of their signature thing. You can't call yourself Dunkin' Maple Frosted Coffee Rolls, though, because that's even worse for the health of those people who are going there for sandwiches at 3 p.m.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say the weirdest thing that they did to their menu was add marinara sauce, because the second that they started offering that on sandwiches, I was just like, what? You can't. That was the day that I said you can't be Dunkin' Donuts anymore. And Fred the Baker from Beyond the Grave said, "No, I'm taking it with me," and he grabbed the Dunkin' and brought it down to hell. Because Fred the Baker's in hell, everybody. I don't know how to tell you this.
He brought the donut down to hell. He left the Dunkin'. Because he was proud of the donuts. Each morning he'd wake up and he'd say, "Time to make the donuts." And occasionally, because he's a demon and living in hell, he would run into himself, and himself would say, "I already made the donuts."
Right, like the commercials were telling us from the
Yeah,
get-go.
we knew that Fred the Baker was
not
going
right
to
with
hell.
this Fred the Baker gentleman, huh? I mean, we still love him.
Oh yeah, because he makes delicious donuts for us. But yes, so they eliminated the maple frosted coffee roll for a hot second from the menu. And this was after I worked at Dunkin' Donuts. Something that I don't talk about nearly enough, which is perfect. I shouldn't talk about this, is the month after I had started work, I had finished my. All right, so I worked for Carnival Cruise Lines for a year. That's established Devon Decker canon. I re-upped for a second contract, and I was told that I'd be doing the same job. But in the 6 weeks off, they ended up pushing that to 10 weeks off. And the reason for that was they eliminated my position because they decided to partner with George Lopez. So I'm like the one person in America who has a reason to hold a grudge against George Lopez. I'm the guy.
I think we all kind of do.
Right, but is yours founded? Did George Lopez cost you your job?
No, but he's cost me a lot of time in my life I'd really like back. But I get your point.
My point is just my point, Sejohn, and there is nothing more. But they had decided to partner with him, so rather than have like comedy club managers anymore, they decided that, oh, we could just have George Lopez record a bunch of like openers, and then we'll just play those, and we can automate the comedy clubs. But like, I had still signed.
You got replaced not just by George Lopez, but by an automated George Lopez.
Yes,
you straight up lived in a Spy Kids movie.
Holy shit, I did. Yeah, I got replaced by Hall of Presidents George Lopez. So I had still signed a contract, so they had to find a position for me. So one of the few ships that still had a back lounge that was not automated, they sent me to that ship. So in addition to doing all of the duties I was doing as a comedy club manager, it was also my job to run the front of house, which meant all of the like big Broadway production shows I would be doing the sound for. Now, here's some inside baseball, and I'm pretty sure everybody who was in the room where all of this happened is no longer working with the company.
You could say the phrase. I know you shat all over it last week, but you could just say it.
Okay, I don't know what you're referring to, because Carnival rolled out something called Entertainment 2.0, and I'm fairly certain that with the rollout of Entertainment 2.0, everyone that I knew at that company was eliminated. that they changed it. So I feel, and also it's 10 years, right? So the statute of limitations, I'm fairly certain, is lifted.
Shitting on a job that you haven't been in for yes. Yeah, I think right? A decade is fair enough.
That seems like fair dinkum. But yeah, so they did that in front of house. Now the thing is, the way that they were running it is they have two singers. They have a male stage like performer lead and a female stage performer lead, and they're supposed to be singing at all of these big production numbers that they do in the main front lounge of the cruise ship. But they really wanted it to be 20% that singer and 20% the live band and 80% of the tracks that they had recorded.
Okay.
So I'm not sure why. I guess because like it assures a better show, right? Like it's strange, right? Because they really wanna, sanitize everything. They want to Starbuck everything. They want to make sure that everybody has the same experience, so that they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, Starbucks is a good way of putting it, or the McDonald's method. Like every time you walk into a McDonald's, you know what you're gonna get, right? They want that for every show. I get that, yeah.
So they want that for every show, and so that's what it is. So my job went from legitimately running a comedy club to what I called monkey work. Now, granted, I was 10 years younger, so I thought more, but what my job and title was muting and unmuting microphones.
Yep.
And that's fine. Like, I did that coming up. like in order to get to where I was in the world, I muted and unmuted a lot of microphones. In fact, it's sort of where Sejohn and I met and why this show is happening.
Under Peter. Oh, man. Yeah.
Is the muting and unmuting of microphones. Which is fine.
It up most of the time for me, but yeah.
Well, you were new. You were learning. And
at least it wasn't me that didn't turn off Ben's mic when he went into the bathroom, which happened that one time.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it wasn't me either. I don't know.
It wasn't you either. I'm sorry.
I want to make sure that
as I said it.
Yes. So these are the truths as they are self-evident. So I went out. I shipped out to my second contract, and first night they're like, "So this is the show. We're just gonna have you watch for the first 2 weeks, and then you'll jump in and touch the board." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do that." I will watch this show once, and then I will be able to do the show, because I'm a goddamn professional. Now, I was at work, and I was talking to the guy who was training me, so I maybe didn't use the Lord's name in vain, but I definitely was like, I'm a professional. I can watch you do the show once and then run the show, and I'd much rather do that, because then you can let me know if I messed anything up. But let me tell you a cool thing about theater 10 years ago, and I'm sure the automation has only gotten better. Everything on that show was based on time code. Mm-hmm. Literally, a computer could have, and probably should have, replaced the person punching the mute button on and off.
I worked with a lighting designer for years that you could tell when he trusted a lighting designer, when he trusted a lightboard operator, because he wouldn't automate the show that much. And I assistant stage managed a few shows where I realized the only light cue was just a go at the top. And then after that, there was nothing left. And you could always tell when he didn't trust a board operator, because the show ran itself at some point. Fucking actors be damned.
Yeah. I mean, and that's all sorts of, like, that's the weird seedy underbelly of theater, is that idea of like, oh, I'm just going to automate this and the actors should be able to catch up.
Yeah, man. I mean, and here's like the thing is, like, you could be a really good, this happens in the programming world. This happens in other jobs too. Like, you figure out the workaround, right? Like, what's the way that I could do the littlest amount of work as possible? So, like, if you're a lightboard operator that is also stuck being the designer for the show, you automate as much as possible because you just don't want to be doing that much work yourself, right? But you also know how to cut in. You know those moments when you're like, oh shit, something's going on wrong with the lights. I know the exact way to jump in here and fix this, right? So, like, that doesn't mean that you're being doesn't mean you're a shitty fucking lighting guy just because you know how to automate the show. The problem is when you leave it to a fucking like second year college student who has no fucking clue how to run a board, and you've basically told him, don't worry, the show runs itself. If anything ever happens, you better fucking pray that like somebody
make sure that someone knows what they're doing, or you're going to be getting a phone call like, you got to get here before the second act because something's wrong.
So that's the thing is like I just love how like personally offended you are that they're trying to let you like just basically just press a button and walk away. I would have fucking loved that.
Oh no. They were against that. Like because I'm learning the show, right? And I'm like, oh, you guys have time code. And they're like, yeah, but you can't trust time code. And I'm like, no, but I can trust time code. Like, do you understand that's why we have time code? That's
but I
why...
can jump in and fix it if anything ever goes wrong, but I can fucking sit back and relax for 20 minutes if I want to.
Like, the fact that I see in the time code that the female vocalist doesn't sing for 16 minutes, I don't need to worry about having my finger near her mute button until there's like a minute left. And even then, like, I'm going to watch the time code. I'm also gonna have an eye on the show, but like, I'm gonna use the time code because that's why the time code is there, so I can use it as a reference point.
Yeah, man.
Because you're not getting goes, right? That was the biggest lie that our college taught us, is that you're gonna have a stage manager in your ear telling you to hit go on everything.
Everything outside of college I have ever worked on, and this is like, I know there are good stage managers out there. Don't fucking at me, every one of you listening to me right now. But every show I have ever personally worked on outside of college, has never had a stage manager that knew what they were doing. It always ended up being some unfortunate soul that didn't even ask for the gig, whether it was like a girlfriend of the director or it was like a boyfriend that of the fucking lighting designer. Like it's always somebody, right? Like a son of somebody that
It's
like
always
used
a
to
way
work
to
there.
save money.
Right,
Is the way that I talk about it.
And like at first I would get really offended, not at the manager themselves for not having experience. I cherish teaching somebody how to do some shit. So somebody that's like, I'm not sure how to do this, so I'm just gonna follow your lead. I fucking love that. I eat that shit up. My problem is that they then turn around and go, because they're inexperienced, we don't have to pay them as much. Fuck you. You actually have to probably pay them more because this poor person is going to think this is the worst experience of their life and never come back. Like you need to make sure you keep them somehow. So you either treat them real cushy or you or you go out there and you actually find somebody that knows what they're doing. Like you can't do both. Like that's the fucking problem with theater right now. There is, and you got me on a fucking high horse, Devin.
No, that's fine. I'm glad to get you on. I mean, there's a reason why I'm out of the game, Sejohn.
Yeah.
And
I have learned some stuff about Utah theater. Okay, I'm not going to name names because this is starting to get to a fucking dangerous territory for like my livelihood. But let me say this. I learned that there was a theater in Utah, in Salt Lake City, a place actually pretty well known for its theater scene, that had the fucking gall for years to hire union workers, but in their contracts, force them to sign over their union pay to them, and then they would pay them a percentage out of it because they did not want to pay union wages.
That's ridiculous.
I know, and it took outside actors coming in because, as I said, the theater scene in Salt Lake is actually like a pretty well-renowned one. Like for like in between Vegas and Chicago, it's kind of a hot spot. So like you ended up with a lot of people coming from out of town that would read their contract and be like, "Fuck no, I'm not doing that." And like at some point, it became like, "Hey, we have to get some lawyers involved," and that was the only thing that stopped them was actually somebody putting their foot down and being like, you can't do this. And that is like one of the horror stories that I have learned about this area as far as like the treatment of people in theater go. And it offends me when that kind of shit happens.
Oh,
so anyway,
yeah, we don't need to talk about the offending of contracts. I'm not going to tell the story, but I got screwed over by a contract pretty severely in a way that I was unprepared for. And I handled it pretty poorly because I was a young man at the time. But, you know, life goes on. C'est la vie. I still got a job working for a cruise line.
Yeah.
So,
but
like,
anyway.
mess. So, yeah. No, so that's the thing, though. But then when I say to the guy, I'd like to run the second show tonight, because there were always two shows, he said, oh, you're just chomping at the bit. You really want to get in there. And then, like, this show in the hallowed halls of the job was like, this is one of the hardest shows to run. Like, so good luck. And I think he expected me to fail, and I ran it flawlessly. Like, if Shao Kahn was there, he would have been like, flawless victory. And I would have been like, you're damn right, Shao Kahn.
And just because I can't let your head get too big, your point is because the show was a lot easier than he was intending. Not that you are like...
No. Yeah, it's not. No, it's the fact that if you're somebody who cut your teeth running a soundboard specifically like that, because I've also run live soundboards. I've done like band festivals and
fuck yeah,
like, so that's a very different type of skill set than muting and unmuting singers and making sure that like a live orchestra is good. Right?
Anybody out there wants to know the secret? You go and work a comedy festival that is enveloped in a music festival. That is a fucking nightmare as far as sound goes, because you have to somehow make the comedian make sense in the midst of four bands around you playing four different genres of music.
Oh, the other one is comedy festival in the midst of a music festival, and the comedy stage switches over to music at 5 o'clock. And you just got to be like, okay, can I do what I want with this board, or do I have to go with how you've said it? And they're like, why? And I'm like, I'm going to do a preset for both if that's allowed.
Automation, bitches.
And then the guy I'm with is like, wait, are you allowed to do that? And I'm like, I know how to do it, and the board allows me to do that.
Also, it's just you and me in this booth. Who the fuck is going to come in here and be like, hey, you kids?
Well, I mean, another story from the cruise line before we, like, another detour on this. A sea tour if it were, I
There you go.
hate myself for that.
I love it. Oh, I'm in.
A Sejohn is, while I was working for them, they had to take the board that I had learned on in the comedy club and send it out to another ship whose board just died. Like, it just died, and we were going to be docked with them. So they're like, we need to move this over, and we'll give you a smaller board. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, honestly, I do a music show in here once a week, and the rest of it is basically two microphones, one that's hot and one that's a reserve, just in case something happens to the hot mic. Like, I can use a smaller board. And they're like, oh, and plus side, you use it for the big shows, the laser shows up on top deck. And I'm like, perfect. So I already know the board. But, you know, because it was a fast and dirty transplant job, it was triage work. So the original board had been set up and mapped to have zones within the comedy club so that you could control, you know, oh, there's nobody over there right now. I just kill the sound over there. Maybe
we don't need to be wasting. Yeah, we don't need to be wasting a bunch of like fucking acoustic energy over there. No, yeah.
So like somebody
weird fucking reverb off of empty seats. Like...
Yeah, somebody had, you know, come in from the main office and arranged that room. And, you know, when I got there, obviously I'm like, oh, we have zone control. I should write down and know what the zones are so that I am aware of it. So then when they're like, you have to set this board up, good luck. And I have no help. It is just me replacing this board. And I'm like, man, it's good to be basically a slave on a cruise ship.
Oh, man.
So I set...
corporation.
So I set the whole thing up and I recreate the zone control. I have to set it up so that it's, you know, it's a digital board. So I'm able to have like, not scenes, instances. So I have it set up in a separate instance so that only people who know what they're doing can use the zone control.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, excellent. So I've done this and it worked. And then, you know, a month later, the head came out and he's like, oh, you did this on your own? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I knew that you were the person to take this job because we needed someone who knew how to do sound and knew comedy. You're like a diamond. And I'm like, thank you. I don't know what to say to that. But then months later, when it came time for me to, you know, move it over, the guy I was training, who I will shout him out, Daryl. He was much older than me. He's been working in the music industry for like 50 years. The guy like grew up running shows and music, and the fact that I got to tutor under him for even just 3 weeks of my life is one of the greatest things that ever happened to me.
Yeah, people don't like. People know the idea of like the old roadie, like they have an image in their head of that and like what that dude is. They don't understand like that. The people like that are like fucking basically gods. Like they get to do whatever the fuck they want. Like he just floats through life and just gets away with it, which he deserves because of everything he's ever done.
And like people were like, oh, it's gonna be Daryl. And I'm like, and then I met Daryl and he's like, I'm gonna teach you everything I know in the 3 weeks that we're together. And I'm like, sign me up. I know how to solder better because of Daryl. I built a snake, like a stage snake. I built that. Me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because he taught me how. And also, he was the snappiest dresser I've ever worked with. So, like, shout out to Daryl. Big high fives. Great dude. Okay, and he comes in, and I'm like, teaching him, I'm like, all right, so this board I had to set up. It was a whole triage situation because I sent mine over. I think it was, like, the Elation. And I'm like, so the nice thing is, and you need to know this because you're going to be running sound back here, is in this instance, I have zone control set up. So, like, you don't really need to touch it that often, but here it is. And I show him how I did it. And he's like, who knows that you did this? And I'm like, well, nobody. I just set it up on my own. And he's like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, you need permission from the people on the land before you do something like that. I'm like, well, the fact is they took my board and that board had zone control. So I wasn't going to lose zone control.
I mean, I think that's a legitimate excuse. It is a feature set that was built into the system before it was taken away from you, and you were given this thing and basically told, do what you will with it. What you did with it was just basically get it as close to what it was before. Like, I don't think anybody could have given you shit about that.
No, and I don't think, but he was like, but I think it was one of those situations, and that was one of the things where he's like, I'm gonna teach you everything that I know. Like that was the test that I passed.
Exactly.
Was like,
you show natural talent.
You just set up a digital board with no guidance. Cool.
Yeah,
I must tutor you. And I use it to podcast. But back to my second contract and doing the show. So I run the show, and it is not as hard as everybody treats it to be. And, you know, that chomping at the bit thing, it kind of got under my skin. And then I realized that I had a year of this to look forward to. That this is all the job was going to be. Yeah. And, like, working in the comedy club, it was sort of a front-facing job. Like, I interacted with, you know, guests a lot. And also, I mean, that's what you're doing. And I'm working with comedians. Like, it was a fun job. But, like, my only friends being 2 mute buttons. So after 4 days, I'm like, I'm gonna, you know, end my contract. You still have somebody on board. This is not really what I signed up for. The contract has changed. And because I had screwed up in my college days, I knew the proper way to go about it.
Right.
Because, like, in those 4 days, I became a pretty heavy drinker to, like, cope with it. Like, 4 days, and I'm like, well, man, I'm already depressed. I can't do this for a year. So I left. So then, back to the actual point of this story, what I did to recover was I took an overnight baking job at Dunkin' Donuts.
Right. Yep.
And
fucking Dunkin'.
I worked
everybody in Rhode Island has to work at one, even if it's just for a day. I did that early morning shift. Do you remember that when we were like snowed in at Pat Vaz's place that night, and my fucking manager was like, "You have to come to work, so I'm gonna come pick you up," and I was like, "I really don't want to do this." Yeah, fuck that job. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Dunkin'.
No, you're right there. So what I did, I got an overnight baking job, and it started on February 1st, and my goal was, by the end of February, I would know what I was doing with my life, right? I called it 28 Days at Dunkin' Donuts, and it was sort of my rehab from my year at sea.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what I did. But while I was still doing that, the Maple Frosted Coffee Roll, which is the start of this story, was still on the menu. And I still know how to frost a good old-fashioned Maple Frosted Coffee Roll, which is why it really bothers me when they're like, we have coffee rolls, but none of them are maple frosted. I'm like, you just grab the cake batterer, and you dip it into maple frosting, and you cover it.
I bet you could make one. I know you can.
And that's why the one right up the street from where we live, they do it now. They're like, I can make you one. And I'm like, yes, please. That would be excellent. But the thing is that when someone makes you a maple frosted coffee roll and it hasn't been sitting there since 5 a.m. when Fred's ghost delivers the donuts to the shop, and the overnight baker hopefully has finished making all the bagels and bagel sticks and things for the day, and now just has to finish the donuts. So,
I wonder if he's upset that we call them Dunkin' Holes instead of what he initially intended, Dunkin' Souls.
No, I don't think he's mad about that. I'm fairly certain Fred, like, he's happy that Dunkin' Donuts survives him. It is his legacy, and I fully believe that he thanks whatever demon is his, like, boss, or maybe he's the head demon. Maybe he's got a whole circle of hell down there.
Look, he's the only one willing to get up at 2 a.m. to just make the donuts. You know what I mean?
Time to make the donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, it'd be nice if he got to retire into, like, a middle management job. And he's not still making the donuts in hell for when Homer Simpson needs an ironic punishment for gluttony. I lost when it's a freshly frosted maple frosted coffee roll, there's a lot more maple frosting on there because they're taking care of you, right? They're doing it for you. And also, it has yet to settle and, like, congeal to it.
Of course, so
I got myself an iced tea and a maple frosted coffee roll 2 hours before we were set to record. And then I I ate the maple frosted coffee roll, and still, like 15 minutes before we're going, I'm like, I'm still covered in maple frosting.
Yeah, you
Like
had a Dunkin' Maple mess on your hands. I get it.
I've washed
Yeah.
my hands. I've washed my face. It has done nothing.
It's everywhere. Ah!
I gotta take care of this. And then I'm like, Papa Roach, play Last Resort. And then it's a whole montage.
Yeah, see, we used to do Bombs Over Baghdad when I lived in that house with Luke and Elise. We used to do
Yeah, because that was a job that like third shift working and all, like, it's a scene, man. And now I've killed 30 minutes of this episode with what should have been I had a maple frosted coffee roll.
No, man. We this is what the show is all about. We've said it before. This is a show about everything. Deal with it. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's implied. The deal with it's implied. No, man. But yeah. So you wasted 30 minutes talking about that. I'd like to spend at least a couple of minutes finally letting you do something that you've been talking about doing for almost a month now.
Yeah, and that's okay. The big thing is, if you're listening to this episode, you might be a new listener, in which case, welcome. You might be a loyal listener, and in which case, welcome back. But in February, Disney Plus decided that High Fidelity, its TV show based on the movie, was too, like, raw.
Risque. Yeah, too risque, yeah.
I was trying to think of, like, there used to be, like, how they sold the Girls Gone Wild tapes.
Yeah.
Too explicit for TV.
Right, exactly.
It was too much for Disney Plus, so they decided to move it over to Hulu. And that made big news for High Fidelity. And because of that big news for High Fidelity and my weird, related to theater, ironically enough, connection to High Fidelity, led us to do an episode that we called Why Fidelity, in which I foolishly embarked on an odyssey through the book, the movie, the musical, which I had found out during the book and movie, and the new television show, in order to, like, see why. Why is High Fidelity something that is stuck so deeply into the cultural consciousness? And why is it getting a show in 2020?
As somebody that got to sit back and watch that happen, I would say it wasn't foolish on my part. It was fantastic to watch. It might have felt foolish on your part.
No. It's like, I mean, I call it a fool's odyssey because it is a lot of work. And I didn't realize how much work it is until... another Too Hot for TV Disney Plus show got shifted over to, from Disney Plus to Hulu. And
yeah, it seems to be like the way of things, which I think is, like, it seems weird when you put it that way, but then I think about, like, in the 90s, whenever they would be like, nah, this is too much, let's make it a Touchstone movie. You know what I mean? Like, this is not new to Disney. It is part of their thing, is where they go in, they say, hey, we're Disney, let us buy your product, and everybody goes, Disney? Stars in their eyes? Sure, here, give us whatever you want for it. And then Disney's like, we're not going to make it a Disney thing, though. We're going to make it, like, 3 companies removed from us. And at that point, you're fucked. Like, you're already in the contract.
Don't think that you're getting a ride at Disney World Tokyo. Yeah. That ain't happening. Maybe Paris.
Say, you set up a fucking shop on Main Street that is like the record shop from High Fidelity, though.
Championship vinyl? That'd be incredible. Oh my God, they should do that. As if Disney, first of all, Disney, we know you're listening. Hi, Michael. Hi, Clark. Hi, Andrea. Right? Whoever the great mouse has assigned to just listen.
I think Brad Bird, probably.
Well, I think Brad Bird listens by choice. I think that Brad Bird's like, hey, a show about everything. I made the Iron Giant.
Let's go to talk to them.
and so Brad Bird's like, and it's yellow. I did The Simpsons. And Brad Bird also apparently an Italian stereotype. And Brad, I hope you enjoyed this. We know you're listening, buddy. Thank you. We appreciate it. But these are the ones who, like, they signed up for that program where you're in college and you get to work for Disney. Yeah. And then, that you're basically a slave there too, right? Corporations do suck, right? There's a weird theme to this episode, and I didn't expect it when we started. But there have to be people who are assigned, and they are like the NSA, specifically for the Walt Disney Corporation. And what they do is they just consume everything that's put out on the internet for ideas for their properties. So, like, we shouldn't focus on, hey, Disney, you want, like, to get our jaded generation to come back to your little theme parks in the time after the virus, right? BC. We're gonna go back to it'd be AC. I fucked up. I'm mad at myself. We can't go back to BC. Well, we can. We just make it after. Whatever. I'm not getting lost. If you want to bring back,
look, in the Avengers, time travel works like this.
If you want to bring back the jaded podcasting generation who's like, I ain't going back to Disney World, you can change Splash Mountain all you want. What you need to do is put on Main Street USA championship vinyl. And, like, for real.
Just hire Jack Black to work there. I'm sure he would love it.
I mean, I would also be okay with the Jack Black XP from the new series.
There you go.
But what all of this is leading up to is that Disney did it again. They're like, oh, we're going to do this show that everybody's going to like on Disney Plus. But then when they realize, maybe they don't want a TV show with an openly gay character to be an original program for Disney Plus. Maybe we don't want to alienate middle America from our brand new streaming service that we kind of still don't know what we're supposed to do with it. Maybe we should make TV shows based on popular movies and not ship them over to Hulu, which we got in some sort of weird exchange with Fox for the X-Men.
Speaking of a fucking deal with the devil, but like that, like it should be said that like I think one of the big things that Disney needs to start doing, like let's armchair fix this after them. Like, I think that Disney needs to fucking stick to their guns on something. I think that's the biggest disappointment I've had so far with Disney Plus is they just don't stick to their guns on things. And I will even point to Hamilton in that like it worked in my favor that way as much as I enjoyed their release of that. But as you pointed out in our Hamilton episode, like that was not supposed to come out for a while. They moved that up because of things. And
moved it up 15 months.
Exactly.
Like
right?
That's huge.
And like fucking stick to a fucking decision about things, guys. Like all of this hype that you build, you know, like 15 years ago when this whole idea of like leaks becoming part of the marketing strategy really kind of kicked into high gear. Like one of the things that helped that was that when something leaked, like, you know, it then became true, and that's what made fans feel good. Now the trick is to leak something and then to like leak something else that kind of halfway contradicts it, and then it's all up in the air, and and I get it, people are then talking about it. It's a conversation because like half the audience has only heard this, half the audience has only heard that. Now there's a bunch of fights on Reddit about what's true and what's not, and like lottie fucking da. That sucks. Like as a fan, like it's great that we're talking about this shit, but guess what? It also becomes super upsetting and alienates a lot of people. And we're not even going to get into so like some of the weird shit that goes on with that sort of crap, right? But stick to your fucking guns on something. Like with Love, Simon being a Disney show, I think it would have been a very interesting topic for us to all talk about. And now I'm not upset that we're about to talk about it, but like it's just not going to have the same meaning behind it.
Right. If it were Disney who was like highlighting and saying, yes, we're going to talk about it, and it's Disney. I mean, first of all, Disney releasing a show like that, I know that they already have like pretty crazy subscriber numbers, even though most of my friends who have it, I know don't watch it. Like we had to set
Hamilton too.
Yeah. We had to set
went up 75% or some nonsense like that. It was crazy.
Right. But we had to like set a rule that we're going to watch at least one thing on Disney Plus each week. And our first thing was Hamilton, and we haven't done it this week. So like already we failed. But it's like I'm paying for it. I want to use it. And I use every other streaming service that I have multiple times a week. I need to find that with Disney, and I just haven't yet.
I mean, for balance, I use it every day. I throw on fucking nonsense. I love like everything from Amphibia to watching the fucking Gummy Bears. Like there's a bunch of weird stuff that ends up in my house on it. And like, I don't doubt that I think you're correct in that not many people are using it, but I think that speaks more to streaming culture than it does specifically to Disney Plus. I know a lot of people that pay for Amazon Prime that never use it. I know a lot of people that even pay for Hulu and don't ever really use it. You know, I'm guilty of it myself. I will pay for a service for 3 months before I ever like fucking remember I've been paying for it and finally watch something on it. Looking at UGC Universe, but yeah, man, I don't think you're wrong. Like there needs to be There needs to be something drawing you back to the app, right?
Mm-hmm. And like The Mandalorian did that for me. Like, and as much as I don't like the single release, it worked for The Mandalorian, and it gave them better numbers in the beginning days of Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But so what it is, and you can hear about it here too, and I would totally recommend going back to our episode called Love Devon, in which I complain about the movie Love Simon and how it didn't really work for me. And if this
let's be nice about this. It wasn't just you complaining for an hour. We did a critical analysis of that movie.
Yeah, no, we looked at it very good, but it's like that's I mean, I guess if I were going to elevator pitch the episode, it would be Devon complains about Love Simon. Like, even though it's like it was like a very good critique and critical analysis of it, it doesn't change the fact that it was pretty much an hour of me complaining about it. And when this was supposed to be a full episode, because I did it again, I did the high fidelity again. I read the book that the movie was based on, Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I rewatched Love Simon in the worst like thing ever. I got it from Amazon. I rented it from Amazon. It was the German version of the film.
What?
So anytime there was English text on it, there was German subtitles as to what it said. And like,
oh my God.
It was just it was stuttery. It was a bad experience. And I wouldn't have thought to do it, but when I watched Dumb and Dumber for this show, and like it froze with like 20 minutes left, I got an email from Amazon saying, "We noticed you had some issues with Dumb and Dumber. We've refunded it." So I'm like, well, I had worse issues with Love Simon. I'm gonna try to get my money back. And I did, right? Happy ending. So I read the book, I watched the film, and then I watched the series that was based on it. And when we were going to do a full episode focusing on it as the sequel and call it Love Sejohn, because the show is called Love Victor, I was going to start it out with a soundbite from Sejohn, in which he says, it really sounds like this would be better as like a 10-part miniseries on something like Netflix. And let me tell you.
What? Was I right?
You were right. You were right on the money. The only thing that sucks about it is that it didn't end. It ended on a cliffhanger.
Of course.
So, and right now, I don't know if they're coming out with new high fidelity, let alone new Love Victor.
But
and
Hulu tries to do the thing that Netflix does, where they keep things like close to the vest until they release. But like Netflix has a way of doing that works. The Umbrella Academy full preview for season 2 didn't release until just last week, and like it comes out in I think 2 weeks. So like that, like good kudos to them. Hulu just can't seem to pull that shit off. I don't know if they don't got the YouTube numbers or what, but that sucks that you like have no idea what's going on with that show.
Right. And I have to, I don't know. Like, I don't know the numbers or anything. I know that I sat down and devoured it. I binged all 10 episodes. Granted, I was on an Odyssey of my own to enjoy everything in the Simonverse, which is how I refer to it. And I have to say, the book is what I really want to speak on, Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, because that book, there is a main character who is a closeted, teenager in high school dealing with, how do I tell and what does it mean if I actually admit that I'm a homosexual? What does that change about me? And like realizing that like it's a whole journey about like, no, he just needs to accept himself. He doesn't change. It just folds into who he is and always has been.
Right.
And really, and that's why I like the title of Versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, because it's not so much, oh my God, I'm gay, what does that mean? It's more, oh my God, I'm part of society, and society tells me that I have to do this and that, and he's not sure how to fit into society, which feels like a more uniquely, like, high schooler issue. In a way,
it's a beautiful way of making the problem universal, right? Like I think for a long time, stories about coming out in media, like let's narrow this down, right? In media, stories of coming out have always been so focused specifically on a character basis that the first thing people start to notice is how that person is not like them. And as a cis white male, like one of the first things is I'm not gay, right? Like, so there's already like a hurdle to really kind of jump over in order to get me to like emotionally connect with your character. And so the book, as famous as it is, obviously for good reason, right, is that it takes that concept, it takes that issue, it takes that problem and makes it one that everybody can relate to, right?
Yes. And he is surrounded by supportive individuals in the book in a way that he is not in the movie. Like if I was someone who read that novel and then in 2016 when it came out and then 2018, oh excited, I get to go see a movie based on this book, I would have been disappointed. I would have been disappointed in and people were, but like the biggest one, and spoilers, so if you want to see the movie or read it, I'm gonna keep it kind of close to the vest. For some reason, at like halfway into the movie, they write off the person who ends up being his like anonymous internet pen pal as a potential person to be. Like he believes that it's this one person, and he walks in on that person making out with a girl at a party. So then he writes it off. But like that never happens in the book. Just in the book, he never even considers that person could be it, which in a weird way speaks to the whole I am, all of us have these secrets and we're all kind of going through stuff. Like when you look at this person and don't even think that he could potentially be the person that you're talking to, and then it ends up being him, that's cool. And then you look through the book and you see like all these little hints to those interactions between them in real life as opposed to interactions via email. And you're like, oh, that's what he was talking about when he's like, I always get tongue-tied around cute guys. And he mentions this character who like, he always seems so shy and he never really contributes, but it's nice to have him there. Like he rounds out the group.
Right.
And the reason why is that this guy has a crush on Simon. So he's tongue-tied and he's quiet in front of Simon. And it's like, oh, wow, look at that. You established a trait. You demonstrated that trait. It made for good storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's a reason, again, that book was as big as it was and got opted to be the movie and all that stuff, for sure.
But the movie does so much to be like the movie version of that story. Like there's the stereotypical gay kid, so that you can kind of formulate in your head that like, oh my God, if I come out, is that how I have to act?
Right.
And then like there's even a moment where, he is outed and everybody just assumes that those two are dating because they're the two gay kids in their class.
Right, exactly.
Like, and it's like, you guys handled that really well. Like you handled that whole thing of I'm afraid of this kind of well. I just wish that character hadn't been such a huge Hollywood stereotype of a homosexual.
Yeah. I mean, especially because it sounds like in the source material that's not the case, right?
In the source material, the mention of other like gay people at the school is, I mean, there are a couple of people who are gay, but you just like accept it. They're just there. So it's like his whole thing is not, I don't want to come out because I'm afraid that people will reject me for coming out. I don't want to come out because it will change literally everything about me. Because that's what he's been conditioned to believe.
Right.
So it's a really interesting journey for the character.
Yeah.
And once you get over the fact that this book was not written for me as a 34-year-old, this book was written to appeal to the YA audience. This is written to appeal to the 12-year-old who finds this at the library, much like I found Angus thongs and open mouth snogging.
Right.
Like, sorry, it's not open mouth. I think it's full on snogging. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a good book. I like that book. I own many copies of it. I'm doing Trump hands. I don't know why. You don't see me. I didn't need to admit that.
How'd you make them so tiny? So there's
the gestures.
Yeah. So like this, going back to what we said in that episode, what I said in that episode, it sounds like it's such a nuanced story that trying to cram it into a less than 2 hour Hollywood experience is just not what that story calls for, right? So you said that the show tends to do it better, yeah?
So the thing about the show is, Simon is a character, and that honestly is why I wanted to watch it. The fact that Victor, you know, he transfers into the school that Simon is a student at in the movie.
And it is supposed to be the movie universe, right?
So is it the same actors? So it's the same actor. And actually, Nick Robinson, who portrays Simon, is an executive producer on the show and does narration in the episodes. So he's connected to the series. And what it is he gets to the school, and because of the whole climax of the movie where Simon waits on the Ferris wheel for the person he's been writing to join him, and like it's become an urban legend at the high school about like finding love and this beautiful love story. So this kid who's like, all right, I'm at a new school and I can just be myself. I can just lead with the fact that I'm gay and people will accept it. I won't have to change everything about me.
Right.
In that fact. And so, but then like he's about to say it and they're like, oh, have you heard about Simon? And of course he hasn't heard about Simon. He's been into school for fucking 10 minutes.
Right.
And it's not like when he transferred there, he got the Simon packet that explained it. So the first thing, he looks up Simon's email address and writes him that he hates him because he made it hard for him. Because he thought that he could like blaze his own trail, but because there's this famous gay love story at the high school, he feels that he can't do that.
Right.
And it's like a really interesting thing. And then Simon, who I've watched 2 hours of him not knowing how to deal with his feelings about who he is, like takes this person under his wing and is like, you know, if you ever need to talk about anything, you can send me emails. I'm sorry. Please understand that wasn't my intention. And like, I'm kind of embarrassed about the fact that it's lore at the high school now.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly become a better person. It sounds like the show does a really good job of talking about the same issue, like, right? Thematically, it fits into the universe, but it does a really good job of not negating the original story, book, or movie. It does a very good job of continuing that. I mean, it does what a good sequel does do, and it explores the idea of happily ever after, but it doesn't in a way that doesn't upset like the fan love of the first thing, whether it was the movie or the show. No matter how you're coming to this thing, it sounds like you're not going to be turned off immediately by it, which is rare. Like that is a very rare thing to find in like a sequel reboot nowadays, which is I can't believe a thing that we can point to more than one of. But like, yeah, the idea that it doesn't alienate anybody and also opens its arms to new people is a fucking like that is a tightrope to walk.
Yeah.
Add to that the other complications of like this is a show about homosexuality in teens in 2020 is like they're playing a dangerous game. I'm glad to hear that it works well for them.
Yeah, it's very good. And actually, the thing that I will speak to the most of what worked for me is that he's a kid, so he's in the beginning he's just like bi-curious and not really sure if he's gay, right? Like he wants to explore and those feelings and see if they really are what they are. And there's like a good chunk of the series where he's in a committed relationship with a girl, and it's like, this is very interesting, this whole like, you know, am I really this? Was it maybe just a thought that I had? I'm in this relationship. I care about this girl, but like he's not into her physically. Like he doesn't want to have sex with her, which like that's a complicated feeling that people have. Like I will admit that like those are teenage feelings where I'm like, you know, I was sexually attracted to women, but that didn't mean that I was ready for sex. Just because everything in society was telling me I should be. You know,
and more to my point in that episode, that this is something that's too complicated to wrap up in 2 hours.
2 hours.
I mean, this would just be something that, like, for 20 minutes he thought he was straight, and then he realized he was gay. It's like hard stop, right? And that's just not how it works for some people. You know, that being said, there are people that openly talk about knowing like what their sexuality was when they were like fucking 6 years old, because some people do figure that shit out. And you know, I know that when I was in like junior high and still figuring my shit out, that there were people around me that already kind of had it down, and there were people around me that thought they had it down, and then 10 years later realized they were wrong. You know, like the idea that everybody's journey is different. And I think that's the other thing that I think is really interesting, is that the show allowed Victor to have his own journey. It was not just a rehash of Simon's.
Well, and the step beyond that is, rather than just being props, because these fully developed characters from the novel are just props in the movie. Yeah. Every character in Love, Victor kind of gets to have a journey about being a teenager and dealing with these feelings. Like there's a girl who, like, she only cares about what other people think, and that's what she tries to define her happiness by. And then by the end of the 10 episodes, she's like, maybe everybody's fucking wrong, and I know what makes me happy. And like, so by doing that, like, it grounds it in the fact that everybody has a journey. Like, it's not.
I like that. I like it a lot. And that's really cool to hear. The last thing that I will say on the subject is that in retrospect, listening to Love, Devon, I do know that one of the big discussions we had is it a good idea to make media like this? And my point at the time was, well, it's a step, right? And you need to start somewhere, and the hope is that the next step is better. I think that this is evidence of that, right? Like they took that step and it was a misstep. A lot of people will admit that. And like, at the time, we were very evident that that even though we disagreed on whether or not it was worth doing, we both agreed that it was not something to be like emulated later on, right? And I'm glad that they took that misstep, because it allowed them to correct themselves with something like this.
Yeah.
So like, and you know, apply that shit to what you're seeing today. Like anybody out there that's gonna take a movie to task, a TV show, a book, a video game to task for its representation issues, like, I'm not saying don't, like, fucking do it. It's the only way that we then get the next better thing, is by everybody's coming up and saying, hey, this is not right. Like, we need to, but like, give it a fucking chance to do that, right? We now live in a world in which sequels are basically fucking mandatory. No matter what piece of media you put out, you better fucking expect somebody's going to ask you to make another one, unless it is so horrendously offensive or tanks so badly that, like, we never see it again. And that's actually rare, right? like people are so surprised when movies that they didn't like got a sequel nowadays, and like, no, the sequel was already in the work before it even went and hit theaters. You knew that. like that's just how the world works nowadays. So like, give these things a chance to grow, because I'm very, very happy to hear that this is a much better experience than the movie was, because we need that. We need that kind of media.
Yeah. In fact, I will admit that discussion that we had about it made me realize that progress is not done in one shot. Progress is baby steps. And the fact that it's the same writers who did the movie and then come into the TV show, I think, because they were able to make those baby steps and show there's an audience for this type of story, that's why they were able to actually push the envelope and explore a lot more themes about this in Love, Victor.
Well, and to creators, like, don't throw the fucking baby out with the bathwater. When something kind of goes sideways because your audience points out a lot of problematic issues with your shit, like, take your lumps, admit you did wrong, but then grow from it. You know, and I think that's another big issue, is that, like, a lot of companies, like, they'll fucking cut ties if something goes sideways with one of their people. You know, I'm not endorsing the term cancel culture, but it is what people refer to when they talk about that, right? Like, I fucking hate that term, because, like, as somebody rightly pointed out on Twitter this weekend, like, name one thing that's actually been straight up fucking canceled due to cancel culture that didn't, like, kind of need it, right? Like somebody out there fucking, like, pointed to, like, you know, Vine got canceled, I guess, but, like, we still have TikTok. It's the same thing, so, like, that doesn't count. that thing wasn't canceled. But the idea that when somebody makes a mistake, allow them to make up for it, allow them to grow from it and do it. And if they're not going to make up for it, if they're not going to grow from it, there's your reason to cut ties. Like, if somebody just, like, if an artist out there just adamantly refuses to do something better, like, what's his nuts from the fucking IT crowd, or J.K. Rowling there, right? Like, all of that turf nonsense that's going on. If I never watch another Graham Linehan show in my life, I won't be upset. Like, he's gotten his chance to do better from me, and he didn't live up to it, right? And, like, so that's somebody that I'm fine not taking back into my life. But, like, the guys that wrote Love, Simon, I wasn't ready to just write them off just because that first movie had some issues with it, you know?
Right. And just because, and you don't know, we didn't see what they wrote. We didn't see the script. We shot that script as focused through a director and then through marketing and focus groups to
through
make
studios.
sure,
Man.
like there's a lot going there. So then to say that, well, what we wrote was successful, maybe let us write the show and do it that way. It is. And you did. You've actually, that whole conversation, because I also re-listened to the episode, really did teach me that, like, I need to stop expecting change overnight. And that's a really big thing that's going on in the world right now, is that, like, just because these protests are happening, things aren't going to change overnight, but every little bit of ground that it gains and every little change that we see, that's progress, and that is how we make the world a better place, and that is how we find better entertainment and just everything. But it is slow going.
But it's nuanced. I don't want to kill that fire in you, man, because the idea is that change only happens because of the people that demand change overnight. You know, it might be slow progress, and that's really easy to see from the fucking sidelines as I sit here and fucking, like, as I sit in my basement in Utah. Like, it's very easy to talk about the slow wheels of progress, right? But at the same time, that shit doesn't happen unless there's people out there demanding that change, you know? So you got to find that balance. You got to find that balance between making sure that your voice is being heard, but also understanding that the person listening needs time to fucking, like, take it in and interpret it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'd like to address something cool that you said. That was a great transition point into the other thing I wanted to talk about this week.
Let's do it.
And that's that everything gets a sequel, right? Sometimes things that you didn't expect to get a sequel end up with a sequel. Sometimes the Kickstarter bonus game that was funded because the game made $1 million as a Kickstarter winds up with a sequel 2 years later. And you scratch your head, but you're like, but the game was good. I'm excited that I get to play more of it. And what I am, of course, referring to is Curse of the Moon 2.
Playing a lot of that on Twitch lately. I've been watching. I've been going back and watching old videos of you like every day.
Yeah. Well, I did the Curse of the Moon stuff, and then Friday, right? So 3 days ago, they dropped the sequel, Curse of the Moon 2. So I played a lot of the first one in order to get ready for the second one. And it's funny that we mentioned that sequels should try to do better or try to be different, because that's what they did with Curse of the Moon 2. And in like 9 out of the 10 boxes, I check yes for what they did. But then there's this last box that is a no. So I guess just starting from the beginning, Curse of the Moon is it's a side story from the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night universe. They have already admitted that Ritual of the Night is the canon. These are kind of like, they're not Star Wars stories. I guess Elseworlds would be the better analog based on things that we've discussed on this show. And
it's the canon continuity conversation. Ritual of the Night is the continuity of the story. That is what establishes what happens when. But these things are canon. They're just kind of just out of the main story. So if anything ever gets kind of like negated, it's okay. We'll just move on from that.
Well, yeah, and going from the original Curse of the Moon to Ritual of the Night, the 3 allies in that game, 2 of them are villains, and one of them is, like, he's sort of a rival, like a Pokemon rival is the best way to describe Zangetsu in Ritual of the Night, I'm here to kill all the demons, and it's like, well, I just kind of want to save my friend and kill some demons along the way. No, you gotta kill all the demons, and you might be a demon. I'm Zangetsu. And it's like, okay, Zangetsu, cool, bye. And going a step further to Curse of the Moon 2, the main villain of Ritual of the Night is actually an ally. And more than just an ally, she ends up being a pretty major plot point. She becomes Princess Peach after you beat the game the first time. And that's interesting. So at this point, there's going to be spoilers for Curse of the Moon 2. The game has only been out for 3 days, but I have beaten it 5 times. And I have a lot of things to say on the subject. So
sure, let's talk about it, man.
if you're like me and didn't want to experience anything before you got the experience you wanted to have with it, you can stop listening now and come back after you have, or you can listen, but I'm not going to shy away. I'm going to talk about major story and plot things because those are where that no sort of checks.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Yeah. Let's be honest. There's 9 yeses, one no, and then please write any comments related to your experience with this. I wrote maybe like a paragraph and a half. So Curse of the Moon 2 picks up from after the events of Curse of the Moon. You have defeated the demon, and the demon's castle was sent back into the depths of hell. But then a tower appears.
Where Fred the Baker takes over. But anyway.
Yes. A tower called the Demon's Tower rises from the underworld. And because that tower's there, the demon's castle's like, hey, we're going to come back too, right? Like, it's going to be fun. So the deal becomes, well, we'll go to the tower.
Having a good time. Can't stop me now. Sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
Doors open, boys. So the plan is, well, if we ascend the tower and we stop the tower, that should take care of the castle, right? Because the tower brought the castle. Let's do it. So you go out and you climb the tower and you find allies along the way. You find Dominique, who is a member of the church, who is sent to, stop the demons. You find Robert, who is an old war buddy of Zangetsu, who has now devoted his life to fighting demons and also just hates the church. And that is described in one scene, and I really want more of that. I really want to know why Robert hates the church.
All right.
And you're familiar with Hachi, a dog's story, right? And not just because we met Richard Gere at URI.
And because I painted the steps for that movie. No. And I was just thinking about Johnny this weekend, talking about fucking Shang Tsung.
That's Shang Tsung, that's not Shao Kahn. But yes.
But he walks up to him and he's just like, he runs up to him and that bodyguard was like, no. And then that dude was like, let him come.
And then Shang Tsung just like did his hand motion like, no, he's cool.
Waved him. Anyway, Hachi, a dog story.
So Hachi, a dog story. There is a dog named Hachi who is in a suit of armor searching for Zangetsu because he is Zangetsu's dog.
Nice.
And the armor kind of looks like a train. It feels very influenced by Hachi, a dog story, the character of Hachi in Curse of the Moon 2. That's all I'm going to say.
That moment when he fights Richard Gere on the quad of URI in a fucking train mech.
Yeah, it was like this real moment where he's like, I know you. You're that dog I left behind. I guess you built the train suit to find me. Good boy.
To kill you.
No, this is strange.
Man, that fucking movie. Anyway, so you were super excited about the dog in the train mech.
I was super excited about the dog in the train mech because it seemed like such a different style of gameplay. Like Dominique is basically Shovel Knight. And I'm not upset about that, but she has the pogo jump and she kind of has the same range as him. And Robert is interesting because he uses a gun. And guns are kind of a big deal in Ritual of the Night, but nobody had a gun in the first Curse of the Moon. And it's very interesting to introduce a gun into a world of, like, gothic fantasy. And just have a guy who's like, well, I have this pistol because I fought in the war, and I'm going to just shoot you. And
yeah, I mean, for anybody that is, like, not completely in the know, this is the thing that was kind of Castlevania and then not, right? Like, am I mixing my backstories
so what
up
it
on
is,
this?
So the way this started is Iga, like, did all these Metroidvania Castlevania games that were exploration based, and then Konami's like, no, we want to go in different directions. People really like Shadow of the Colossus, so we're going to make Castlevania Shadow of the Colossus.
Mm-hmm. And you end up with Lords of Shadow.
Yes.
So he decides he wants to continue the legacy in this. So you're basically talking about fucking like bringing a gun into Castlevania. So anybody that's like trying to do the math on that.
So
that's
like,
what we're talking
if
about.
Mega Man were in Castlevania and he had to reload after every shot, that's Robert. Really Mega Man X, because he also has a wall jump. So you have Dominique, who's Shovel Knight, you have Robert, who's Mega Man X, and you have Hachi, who is kind of a new thing altogether because he's
Nice.
in a big old mech. So he's a huge target. He takes damage like nobody's business.
I was going to say his hitbox must be huge, right? Yeah,
But he's
okay.
also a robot, so he has the most health of anybody. And he don't give a shit about your environmental hazards. Oh, there's spikes? I'm going to just walk on the spikes and break them.
Nice.
Oh, the slippy floors? Guess what? This has grip feet. So I don't have ice physics to deal with anymore. The only things that he cannot deal with are lava, because no one can deal with lava. Lava is terrifying.
In all of video game history, I don't know of anybody. I might be misremembering, but
Well, let me. The Curse of the Moon 2, someone deals with lava, but we're not there yet.
okay.
And certain types of poison. And I say certain types of poison because in level 2 with Hachi, he was able to just drive through the poison without taking damage. But then in the final stage, I'm like, oh, poison. I have to be Hachi for this. And I jumped into poison with him. Hachi just died. And I'm like, well, that was disappointing. You taught me one thing. And it's not like it was a slightly different color. The reason I thought it was poison is that they used the same purple for the poison.
Boo. But anyway.
But yeah, but I mean, I got past it. I finished the game. So the first, and it's broken up into episodes, which is definitely in my comment area of this survey. So the first episode is Zangetsu trying to climb the tower, and every time, one of the cool things about Curse of the Moon is when you defeat the boss, they have like their final attack, like in every good anime, right? They do a final big strike, and if you're able to survive that, you get an extra life. So it's kind of cool. But that first episode, the big strikes start, and then one of your 3 allies ends up saving your ass. So, like, the dragon's about to eat you, and then Dominique falls from the sky and stabs it in the head. Or the plant monster is about to explode, and Robert cuts it in half.
Okay.
And Hachi, like, just derails a train that's about to run over you.
Steals your glory.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So they steal your glory, and then they're like, I'm coming with you. And the big difference between Curse of the Moon and Curse of the Moon 2 is, in Curse of the Moon, Zangetsu, because he's a freaking scary samurai man who, like, has dedicated his life to hunting demons, he's mistrustful of people. He doesn't trust easily.
Right.
So when you find these allies along the world, you could talk to them and have them join you. You can just ignore them and walk on by, or you could straight up murder them.
Oh, shit. Okay. All right.
And if you murder them, you gain, like, power. You gain, like, a superpower from, like, killing their soul.
Interesting.
Like, so you kill the first person, you get a double jump. You kill the second. No, first person gives you the ability to slash your sword in a curved pattern instead of just stabbing with it. So to use a sword like a sword, basically.
Right.
Is what the first person does.
Instead of just going around poking everybody to death? Gotcha.
The second person gives you a double jump, and the third person gives you a dash if you kill them. So you have this, like, decision on how you want to play through the game is, do I want to partner with people and see if, you know, friendship truly is magic to defeat the demons? Or do I want to be misanthropic and just walk on by? Or do I want to just think everyone's a demon and murder them? They take that away from you. That choice is gone in the first episode of Curse of the Moon 2.
Oh.
Now, and it's not episodes like Sonic the Hedgehog 4, which exists. I will maintain that it exists. People say it doesn't exist. It exists. I played it. I played it while I worked on a cruise ship, ironically enough. But all of the episodes are included. So you go through episode 1, you find these friends, you find a sword called the Soul Eater, you defeat the demon at the top of the tower, and then you think everything's good, but then the demon comes back and Dominique sacrifices herself to avoid the demon coming through and destroying the world. And you're like, oh, that sucks. But then, you know, Hachi, Zangetsu, and Robert are like, why don't we go climb the tower again and see if maybe we can save Dominique from the demon? So you get to episode 2, which is trying to save Dominique with these 3 people. Now, so you have to go through different paths because you don't have Dominique. So you have to use Hachi and Robert's movement types. So it's cool. It gives you a chance to learn these other characters, and they get to build one level but give you different paths through them.
Right.
So, instead of having to build a whole new game, like, oh, we still have the theme of Scary Forest for the second level, but you see a lot more, like, Scary Forest things. Like a giant plant that shoots out giant plants. Because that's terrifying. Let's just think about, oh, that's a big plant. Oh, my God, it just shot out a bigger plant.
This plant's all the way down.
It's nothing but plants, Dad. But so that's interesting. But in that playthrough, you're able to find a sword, and this is the no box. You have to find 3 pieces of a sword, and then you have to find one room where you can combine them together. And you give up the Soul Eater to use what is called the Zamatao. And the Zamatao is a downgrade. So the Soul Eater is an upgrade. It gives you it gives you a 3-hit combo, and you slash it instead of just poking with it. Right? So you get the Zamatao, you do all this stuff to get the Zamatao, and then it's like, yeah, you can't do any of that cool stuff anymore. You can just poke your sword.
But don't you understand the science behind it, man? You had to go back to the beginning because of the meaning of life is beautiful.
It's a magic sword that, like, apparently can destroy the demon without destroying the possessed. It's basically the holy glasses from Symphony of the Night and the sword that you use in Ritual of the Night in order to spare Jeeble and stop the demon that is controlling him. So, like, there's definitely existing cause for it, but it's the first time that I can ever think in my entire history of gaming where to get the quote-unquote good ending, I had to take a downgrade on my character. Do you have an example as a video game scholar, Sejohn? I feel like you fell down. Sejohn? Well, Sejohn's not there, so I guess I'll keep talking until he comes back. But yeah, so you take a downgrade by getting the Zamatao. And then, Sejohn? I hear you kinda.
Yeah, no, we talked so long my beats died. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So question on the table. Do you have an example of a video game where you take a downgrade?
Where you take a downgrade in order to achieve, like, yeah, man, I'm trying to think of this. Like there's plenty of games where, like, in order to get, like, the certain ending, you have to go through just doing this, right? Like the idea that, you have to play on a harder difficulty, right? Or right. Like, just, like Last of Us, where you have to put on, like, fucking brutal mode where, like, any gunshot instantly kills you. So, like, in that sense, however, like, it's
4 levels in.
It's 4 levels in, and it is so. You haven't been playing that way the whole time. You don't know what you're getting. There's a lot of the set dressing on this one that makes it especially kind of a poke in the eye.
It was very strange. Like, I'm like, oh, cool, I got that sword. I earned that sword. And they're like, it possesses an untold magic within. And I'm like, oh, cool, maybe, like, now I can charge my sword for a better slash. And no, I can just poke with my sword. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So then you finish the game with that sword. So you strike at the final demon, and it spares Dominique, because I told you it kills the demon, not the possessed. And so that unlocks the final episode, in which all your buddies from the first game come, and you're like, we have to go to the moon! Because while Dominique was possessed, she found out that the army on the moon is going to invade the Earth.
Because it's a rule on all anime that we've just got to fucking one-up this, and what's more one-up than going to the fucking moon?
Probably Mars. But yeah, it's weird. So you gotta go to the moon. And that final...
Gotta be a story in 3, Dev. What are you doing?
Yeah, well, anywho. But that game becomes a Mega Man game. Where the 7 levels that you've played up to that point, you can choose to start in any of them. And there's an element of randomization where every time you start a game, one of your companions is assigned to each of the levels, and one of the levels has no companion assigned to it.
Okay.
So you go through each level searching for the items in order to make your spaceship work. I swear to God, that's actually what the game is. And then when you finish a level, you also get to use that companion that you beat the level with going forward in all of the other levels.
Nice.
So it's like you collect your team back up in order to go to space and take on.
And you got to figure out which one you want to. Do you want to fight Cut Man first so you get the cut power? Or do you want to fight? I gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, it's still the same bosses, but one of the biggest complaints I have for this game is the boss of the 6th level is just an RNG fest. Like, it is not fun at all. And it's weird because these games specifically have always been pattern-based. It's like learn the pattern of the boss, and as you go from like the first in Curse of the Moon, you go from standard to nightmare mode. Like the pattern is changed slightly. Like maybe they shoot a 4th bullet when it used to just be 3. So it's like an interesting way to challenge yourself.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Still
it still feels
the
pretty.
Pattern. Yeah,
yeah. It still feels pretty cheap. Like, and this is not the only game like this where you've been following patterns the whole time to defeat bosses, and then like just to make things difficult, they decide to just like eliminate the idea of pattern, and it's just like that's not fun, guys. That's not stepping up the issue. You know what I mean? Like, add a 6th shot if that's really what you want to do, but like don't fuck with the idea that like I need to follow a pattern.
But yeah, the boss that I have died the most to is the level 6 boss. And that was like surprising because they were difficult, but once I learned the pattern, I was able to do what was necessary. But this one is like, good luck, just good luck. But the catharsis is when you finally get to that person, if you have Alfred, the old alchemist from the first game on your team, he has a lightning attack, and that just kills it. And it felt like real good to be like, I brought Alfred this time.
Nice.
Now you're dead. Bye.
Fucking great.
So that was fun. Like, that was a fun thing. But, so you go through all that, and then the 9th level is a shooting game. Like, it's, like a shoot 'em up out of nowhere while you fly to the moon in your spaceship. And I have to say, kudos, because you gave me more content, but, like, surprising and strange, but still in the yes box. And then you get to the moon, and the gravity is turned down, and it's all this stuff, and then you beat the game, and it's exciting. But if you went through episode 2 and you didn't get the sword, you just beat the game with the Soul Eater, that unlocks a 4th episode called Episode EX, which I imagine stands for extra. I don't know that it stands for extra. That's just my belief. And in that one, because Zangetsu hesitates before killing the demon, all of his friends are hurt or dead.
Oh,
Robert,
God.
Hachi, and Dominique have fallen. So Zangetsu's like, I need to go kill that demon. It's taken everything from me. And as he begins to walk up the tower a 3rd time, his buddies from the first game show up, and they're like, we thought you might need our help.
Okay.
And bonus, here's the Zamato sword. You need to kill the demon, but not your friend. So if you play through the game and don't look for the thing that they don't tell you to look for it, but the path that you have to take because everything else is blocked off because you don't have Dominique helps you find the 3 parts of the sword. And like, in the first playthrough, I found that room by accident. So, like, it didn't seem super hard to find that sword. But if you don't play the game like that, it tells a better story.
Oh, man.
Because, like,
that's a
you
bummer.
suffer defeat, and then your old friends teach you, like, the meaning of not letting defeat get you down. The only thing that I would change is make it so that you cannot get the Zamato sword until that version with the old player characters. Because if you do that, then you're good job, right? Like, you have them come, they're like, we've heard tell of a sword that's been sent to the 3 corners of the world, and we'll help you find it so that you can finally defeat this demon.
Yeah, it's weird that they give you the ability to kind of go through that early. I don't know what they achieve by that without being somebody that's like super into the game. I can't really
Like,
think of a good
I,
like
I
reason.
as someone super, first of all, once it turns into Mega Man X and you get to go like to whatever level you want,
Hmm.
like that is when the game became like this is what the game should have could have been, like from the beginning, and it would have been awesome. And
Hmm.
it tickles that like randomizer part of my brain, the fact that every time you start one of those of the final episode, the companions are randomized as to where they go.
Mm,
So like it's going to be a different experience each time.
right.
Speedrunners will hate this, but
Hmm.
you speedrun episode 1 then. Don't speedrun the final episode. But it's just I don't know. It felt like it took away from the whole storytelling aspect, like to make it so I could circumvent a whole episode that like still had story significance.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it almost makes you feel like what they intended was that was like a big reveal. Like, hey, you can get the sword, and then when you go through again later, you can be like, I wonder if I can get the sword early, and then you do, and you feel like a badass. But like that clearly didn't happen, right? Because you figured it out like too soon. So like how do you can't really gate that, and like it's a very weird choice.
Yeah, and it's sort of the niggling thing in the back of my mind as like this was an issue. But then I've been streaming my playthrough of Curse of the Moon 2. I've been doing that on Trovo, which is like the new hotness in town, trying to like
Nice.
fight against Twitch for streaming dominance. And it's
Okay.
time for that, right? Mixer fell down and so did Facebook, right? We talked about the Mexican runner being a streamer on Facebook Gaming.
Hmm.
And literally the same week that I talked about him being someone who was on Facebook Gaming, he chose not to renew his contract with Facebook and is back on Twitch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was surprising. Sometimes I feel like I might be controlling this world. Maybe my name is Devin Truman and I just didn't know that. And it's my show. It's the
I
Truman
moved
Show.
outside the bubble.
No, I mean
Yeah,
you're
man.
still in the bubble. I can never see you. That's what's gonna break the reality one day. Is I'll
I'm
be
gonna
like
run into you
at
on
like a
fucking,
Chili's and I'll see you in the back corner. Man, I don't like what I just did. But yeah, so it's just one of those strange things. But I've been playing it on Trovo, and someone had mentioned to me, "Is this game better than the first one?" Now I love Curse of the Moon, as evidenced by the fact that I played through it like 7 times in order to get excited for Curse of the Moon 2.
right.
But it's not that it's better, it's that it's different. And I don't think it's an example of you need to play the first one to fully understand and appreciate the second one.
I mean, I think that's kind of rad because, like, just to get super meta on it, like, that's kind of what old SNES and NES games were like, right? Like, they couldn't guarantee that people could afford to have played the first one, slash, God knows when it came out and the availability on it. So they kind of just had to treat every game as if it was going to be your first one. And it's why you ended up with a generation of people talking about, like, Link to the Past being their favorite Zelda and not Zelda, right? Like, or like a bunch of people talking about how Final Fantasy 3/6 is like their Final Fantasy because that's where they came into the series, right? And it was a kind of a necessity then. So it's kind of cool that like a game that is, you know, aping that era of gaming is actually kind of finding that same level of comfort.
Right. And it really reminded me, I talk a lot about Capcom, and the first game is sort of a pilot. And if you really want to experience the game, you want to play the second game in any series of theirs.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the first Mega Man has a lot of issues. As much as I love it, a lot of issues. Mega Man 2 refines it and is what is copied throughout the Mega Man series going forward.
I mean, and that happens even in later games. I mean, take a look at something like the Uncharted series. Infamously, like Uncharted 2 just became like this like masterpiece. But like really anybody that loved Uncharted 1, it was really just more of that, just refined in a lot of ways. Their storytelling got better and the mechanics got a little bit smoother. But like it wasn't like any great departure from the first one. But like, there you have it. Like, that is something that still happens in gaming. Again, it's a factor of like, you can't expect that people have really been in the first. Maybe now nowadays that you can really kind of read your fan base better, but like, not 10 years ago, not 15 years ago, you couldn't guarantee that people had even known about the first game.
True, and I think it's the strange thing of taking that whole marketing strategy of we're going to release a game and then we'll release a sequel. We're in an era where a lot of these people who didn't know anything about the Curse of the Moon game saw that 2 was coming out and immediately went out and played it because it was still available. And I think $10 across the board. I don't think anywhere it was more than $10.
Right,
so a lot of people were like, oh, Curse of the Moon 2, I guess I'll check out the first one since it'll be cheaper than the new one, and I'll see if I want to get the new one.
Right.
But it led to a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people talking about this game feeling rushed as opposed to the first game. Now, first of all, the first game was a like stretch goal on a Kickstarter that no one should have expected anything from. And ends up being this like legitimately really good game that feels like the fourth Castlevania like 8-bit title in a lot of ways. So it's weird to call that not rushed, where they're like, we just need to do this so that we can tide people over because Iga wants to change the color of the wall sconces in Ritual of the Night one more time.
Right.
So we just need to let people know we're making games.
Have that color sconce, man.
Yeah. So it's strange, but like I look at it more as the difference between Mega Man and Mega Man 2, where in Curse of the Moon, everything, like every torch is yellow except for the ones that have sub-weapons in them. In this one, there are yellow torches that hold weapon energy or money. There are purple ones that hold sub-weapons, and now there are pink ones that have health. And like that right there is awesome. Checkpoints are now indicated. A candle lights in a room if it's a checkpoint room, where before you didn't know if you had gotten to a checkpoint or not. You didn't know how far your death was going to send you back. So like there's a lot of quality of life changes to the game. The bosses have life meters. And let me tell you, that is a godsend in a game like this.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna sit here and talk about fucking entitled gamer culture, like we're gonna have a whole other episode.
Well,
on our
no,
hands.
but that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not trying to talk about that. I'm trying to say, like, in a lot of ways, it reminded me of the changes between Mega Man and Mega Man 2.
Right,
and
the people demanding more, I think, just like don't really get that.
Right. But I think that's why, like, I think that if they had just gone with the whole, we need to go to the moon, we're going to explore to find the pieces of a spaceship to go to the moon.
Yeah.
Like, if they had just done that as the game, it totally would have alienated, like, the fan base from before. So by leading up to it with these 2 or 3 episodes that are more like the original game, you pull that Band-Aid off faster, right? It moves slower, but it makes that change feel like something like, oh, I've played this game already twice or perhaps 3 times, and now I'm getting to play it in a brand new way.
Yeah.
Where, like, before,
sure,
what Capcom probably would have done between Mega Man 1 and Mega Man 2 had Mega Man 1 been linear is just introduced, well, now you get to choose where you go. Good luck. And I think that, like, so it's that fact of the entitled gamer, like, definitely weirdly has a voice in it, to the fact that, like, well, they would have complained if we had just released the game that we wanted to release.
Yeah.
So we
sure.
we completed these 2, and I don't know anything about how the creation process of this game happened, but I do know Inti Creates. Most of the Inti Creates games that I have played are more open world. Like, they did a remake of Blaster Master they call the Blaster Master Zero, and that pretty much sticks to the Blaster Master formula. But then Blaster Master 2, fully open world. Like, you get to choose the order in which you fly through the galaxy to save, your co-pilot in the Sophia 3. And that's very cool. But like, that's what Inti Creates does. I think about, they were the ones who did Mega Man ZX, which was the first Metroidvania style Mega Man game.
Yeah, right.
And it's like one of those things where like, so they took this series and they turned it into an open world, but like connected via the hub world of something like a Metroid or a Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And it's very interesting to see that. So like, Inti Creates to me represents these games that are choice driven. They want to give you an open world experience, but in a 2D semi-retro feeling game. I don't know.
Okay.
It just seems
I think it goes back to what I was saying before. Is that whereas like Love Victor did this really cool thing where it's able to bring in old fans and create new. That's a hard line to walk. I think that's exactly what you're pointing to. Is that they're in this position where they don't want to alienate people, but they also want to kind of keep moving forward, and so they have to walk that line. Right now, they're not dealing with a lot of the same social pressures that something like Love Victor is, so it's a lot more kind of obvious and present the problems that they're coming up against. But there you have it, like the same kind of issues.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting thing that I had not even thought we would touch on, is just like the difficulty of sequel culture. Because like, even though I have that, like my big three complaints are: A, the 6 boss sucks. The 6 boss will always suck in Curse of the Moon 2. I don't want it to get patched or changed or anything. It sucking is part of it. 2, that you have to take a downgrade in order to unlock the final episode. And it's not explicitly pointed out that this is going to be an upgrade. Like, that's not going to be an upgrade. You're like, you got this sword, and it has a deep magical power within. And you're like, ooh, new sword. And then, no, not new sword.
You're taking away the empowerment that the player should be feeling in that moment. Like you're just pulling the rug out from under somebody.
Which is a cool subversion, right? Like, it's something that I like. That
yeah.
But it was weirdly handled.
Right.
Like,
there you go.
Like, when you get the Soul Eater, you have a whole list of tutorial as to like, you now have the Soul Eater sword. You can do a 3-hit combo. You'll slash instead of stab, and all of your sub weapons have become empowered to like have new attack methods. Make sure you try them out. Like, it relates to you what that sword does, but it poorly tells you what the other sword does in a way that I was surprised, because the game like really conveyed information to you well. And then the third one is just, you guys should have just committed to it and made it episode 1, 2, 3 and final, instead of making what should be the third episode by all accounts an extra thing that you don't necessarily have to complete in order to see the full story of the game.
Fucking wild.
Yeah, it's just... But I mean, I recommend it. I don't think you need to play the first one. I definitely recommend the first game because it is awesome. But I think it is a game that if you are like, I kind of want to play Curse of the Moon 2 because I've seen stuff on Twitch or I've seen ads and it looks very cool. It is very cool. Just understand that you'll have a little bit deeper understanding of the extra episode if you played Curse of the Moon. And that's about it. Whew. Sejohn, anything else that you would like to add?
Oh man, I'm glad we finally get to talk about Love Victor. I'm excited that it did kind of exceed expectations. I also have not heard much about it since then. But you know, with COVID going on, it's the last thing anybody's talking about right now.
Yeah, the 24-hour news cycle on entertainment has become like a 4-hour news cycle. People binge it, they talk about it, and then they move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, things are getting real weird. Loving the time of COVID. It's a real weird thing. But no, I'm glad that we did it. I think it was something that we totally needed to do, considering the history of the show has with the source material. And I'm very happy you did what you did.
Yeah, no, I am too, and I'm glad that I finally got to release it all, because it's been inside of me waiting to come out, and I'm glad that it finally got the chance to.
Nice.
You mentioned something that DC Universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are going to talk about DC Universe next week, all right?
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about what's been going on with it and kind of what's not been going on with it. But part of me is like hesitant to talk about it because there's so much stuff that like is coming down the road. But then I think about it and a lot of stuff behind us that we just haven't mentioned yet. We should talk about it. You're right. You're
Yeah,
totally right.
you mentioned that, and I'm like, it's something that I want to address, especially as over the last 2 weeks, I've been using HBO Max a lot more, specifically for the one thing I use DC Universe for.
Mm-hmm.
That and Close Enough, which is the actual name of J.G. Quinzel's new show.
Yeah. His new like regular show for adults.
Have you watched it? Have you seen anything yet?
I have not yet. I just introduced the idea. I told you last week that I was hoping to surprise some people in the family with it, and they are super excited. So maybe even tonight, we might.
I have watched 2 episodes, which is 4 shorts. I am sold. I have not laughed at an animated like show the way that I've laughed at Close Enough in a very long time.
Fucking rad, man.
Looking forward to that to talk to. Plus, I think I'm going to watch My Spy finally. It dropped on Amazon Prime, and I wanted to see it since September of last year before it got pushed because they're like, no one wants to release anything on September 27th. I don't know why. I don't know what movie pushed everything. As far as I know, nothing. But so we'll have that to talk about too. But I think we've done a lot of talking so far. So if you have anything that you'd like to address to Sejohn, very early on he said, don't at me. Definitely at him. Ask Siege versus the World. If you want to yell at him about, I think it was stage managers or something.
Yeah. And if you wanna hit up Devin and talk to him about how he got his maple mess, like exactly what you have to do to order that, you can find him at Devin D. Decker.
Well, I'm glad, because if you haven't gotten it from this, I mean, there are definite notes that I can consult and give you an even deeper story. So I look forward to hearing from you. But until next time, Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.